All right, I've got a quirky little episode for you today. So let's get this thing going. Welcome back to the PS Admin channel. My name is Mark. I'm the PowerShell admin. And again, if there's one thing I'd like to emphasize about this channel, one takeaway for beginning scripters or struggling Windows admins, it's to make the shell fun. I want you to develop a healthy curiosity toward the inner workings of your computer or the computers that you work on, and to always be looking at your tasks and trying to identify what are those rough edges that if only you could file them off would make your work more enjoyable, because I think that would make you both enjoy your work more, but also you'd be more productive and you'd be better equipped for that next job that you've got your eye on. With that out of the way, today what we're going to be doing has no practical value, really. Sorry to say, but hopefully you'll have some fun. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a random dad joke to the startup of our PowerShell session. We're going to use a public API rather than a local database, which would actually be a better option if this were an important task. But instead, we're going to use a public API so that we can learn a little bit about APIs, about JSON, just kind of learn how to consume web RESTful data. So the API that I selected is called icanhazdadjoke, and it's icanhazdadjoke.com. It was the first hit, but there's also some things that I liked about it versus the other ones. So if we go to the About page, we'll see that there's no particular terms of service here, no rate limiting that I can see. The contact is just email. So it doesn't insult our intelligence by asking us to apply for an API key like some of the other joke APIs I've seen do. That's overkill. These are the simplest possible calls you could make. And so anyway, our thanks to Brett Langdon. You are doing good work for the good of us all. Keep it up. If you go to the API spec page, we'll see that the endpoint that we're going to call for a random joke is just the normal URI, but then we're also going to specify an accept header to our request with either application JSON or text plain. Text/HTML is the default. If we just go to that, that pulls up this page here, which is designed to be human readable and serve ads. But for the API, we will be using application/JSON because that gives us the joke ID, so we can look up specific jokes later. Let's go ahead and just demo it really quickly. We don't need to specify the method because get is implied. Joke.com. Let me make sure I'm not blocking you there. And if you'll notice, the accept field takes a hash table. So remember how hash tables are rad and you should learn them? Well, this is one of those circumstances where they're quite useful. So we can see here that it returned an object because it has multiple properties versus if we just did it, I'll show you real quickly. If we just do text/plain, all we get is the joke, but we want the ID as well. So let's start putting this into a function. I should mention the reason we're using invoke REST method versus invoke web request, which is the other major PowerShell HTTP commandlet, is that this is a very lightweight request, and invoke rest method is designed specifically to get JSON, XML, plain text. It's also really good for downloading files directly from direct file links. Invoke web request is pretty heavy. It runs Internet Explorer under the hood. It's great for parsing web pages that are designed to be read by people, but it's overkill for like an API call like this that is designed to be read by a machine. There's a lot more to load. You get a progress bar. That's not necessary. It's not what we want. So let's get let's go ahead and get this function going. I'm going to call it Get-DadJoke, and as always, I'll be sketching out the function in the console, and then we'll copy it into the PowerShell ISE to polish it up and format it a little bit before we copy it into a profile script. So we're going to put in one parameter right now, which is optional, which is ID. So if you specify that joke ID, then it's going to return a specific joke. And so the URI by default is the random one, which is icanhazdadjoke.com. However, if the ID parameter is supplied, then the URI equals same thing, but /j/ID. I always put anytime I do strings like this where there's a variable in the string, I always use a sub expression, which is the $sign and then 2 parentheses, because that lets you access properties, and I think it's just a good habit to be in. This would work technically if I were to just format it like so, with just the variable within the double quote string. But I don't really like, oops, oh, that would not work. I don't really like doing it that way. I like just practicing what I think is a good habit. And I found that this /j/ID, that's on the here on the API page. Tells us how to specify or fetch a specific joke. That's only if the ID is specified, and then we want to actually pull that joke. Again, we want the application JSON accept header. We're also going to specify that it should only wait about 4 seconds at most for the website to respond, just in case it's not there. And I don't think it's going to make a difference, but we're going to tell it if there is a error to ignore it and just silently keep moving along. I think it'll still pass that error if it's unavailable to the console, but maybe it'll be a little bit quieter. And then if a joke is retrieved, first thing we're going to do is log that joke so we can retrieve the ID later or check it later, or just want to check the joke text. All good things. All we care about is the ID and the joke. I don't know if you saw earlier, but they put the Brandon, is it? Brandon Langdon? Brett Langdon. They passed the HTTP status code in the API, which is kind of unusual. That actually should be handled in the HTTP response. It's like passing it twice. It's unusual, but I don't really know what, I'm not really sure what the purpose was, but that maybe there is one and I'm just not seeing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to save it into the same directory as our profile. We do that by substituting it for the first part of the path, our profile, and then split path. That'll whack off the end of the that profile variable, which is our profile script name. And then we'll just add dadjoke.log. We want to append using export CSV. We want to force encoding to UTF-8. And we don't want type information. We never want type information. That's the most useless feature of export CSV. And in .NET Core PowerShell, the open source version, you can by default, it doesn't include the type information for export CSV. It's like one of the best features of, honestly, I really think that's one of the most important changes they made. So the joke, and now we're just going to write the output of the joke. And there's one thing I'm going to be doing here, which is to trim it in case the joke has any trailing or preceding white space, and then I'm going to do a little bit of regular expressions on it. It's kind of, this might be a little bit confusing, but let me tell you what this is doing here. So starting with the joke, we want to trim it again to remove any trailing or preceding white space, and then we want it to break it up at the if there is a question mark. We're assuming that's a setup and then a punchline. So we're going to replace the question mark, and then whatever comes after it, like a white space or a new line, if it is on a new line, they're inconsistently formatted, with just a question mark and then a new line. So it's possible that it has a carriage return and a line feed. This is regular expressions. The backslash is the escape sequence. This is just PowerShell's escape sequence, which is a backtick and n. That's a new line. And same with here. Should be good. We're just going to test it real quick, and then if it works. So this one doesn't have a question mark. That one does. So if you see, it broke it into two separate lines right after the question mark. So that's good. And then what I'm going to do is that path. So that's been logging. So we want to read that log. And let's test that last one by calling it by ID. And so that looks good to me. So now we're just going to, now we're going to get we're going to go ahead and get the, that function content. That's good. Copy it to the clipboard. Finally going to get into PowerShell ISE. And we're going to format that as a function. Should be really easy. I don't know why it does break some of these commandlets onto multiple lines. I don't have word wrap turned on here. I'm not really sure what not really sure what's going on there. Why it does that when you access the function via get content like we have been. Oops. All right. I think that's pretty straightforward. Though there is something I'm, first of all, we should type that, we should constrain that as a string. I think what we might want to do is, let's add a switch in there for format output. And if that is specified, we're going to do, I want to show you. So we're just going to add one little feature here to make it kind of nice if we want, or optionally just return it as plain text like we were. Now that will be output text. Color equals 10. That's a console color. Those are 0 to 15. I think it's either 0 or 15 is black, but the brighter ones are the upper range. And then for each line in output text, right host line, foreground color, And then we want to increment the color by 1. So let's try that again. All right. Actually, let's see that we're gonna. That's the ID. So, right. So that's what that looks like. But say we want to do formatted output, it will do different colors. Looks like green and cyan, or 10 and 11, and that would be just to kind of help distinguish the kind of what the punchline is. Anyhow, thank you very much. We're just going to go ahead and copy that right into our profile script. I appreciate you guys coming along for this for today's exercise. I know it was pretty silly indeed, but you know, like I said, what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see people who are trying to learn PowerShell just look for ways to you know, just to make it fun, to make it more. Did we not do formatted output? iPad. Oops. The format output. Format output. Okay. There we go. I like to see people, you know, really have some fun with PowerShell, and just to really kind of stretch their legs, make it their own space. I'm here if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link the commandlet I added to a GitHub gist in the description. I'm also going to link to regexer.com, which is my favorite site for tinkering around with regular expressions, in case you were wondering about that part of the commandlet. I didn't really delve into that too much because it's kind of its own beast, and that's not the point of this, not the point of today's exercise. And then also, of course, I'll link to icanhazdadjokes.com or dadjoke.com, because you know, we want to give a shout out to is it Brett? To Brett Langdon, and just appreciate his hard work there, making the world a slightly funnier, smirkier place. All right, take care. Have fun in the show.